Joining us for some key observations on today's supply chain, Victoria Ma, Head of Digital Innovation at Miebach. Victoria, it's great to see you. Welcome.
Thank you, Russell.
Victoria, I know that you have been involved in dealing with companies in the fashion apparel space. Very important part of the supply chain. I'm just curious about the observations that you can make about challenges going on in that space, not least of which would be e-commerce. So walk us through that if you would.
Yeah, sure. The fashion apparel industry, historically, we all know its unique characteristic of being very fast, right? And every season changing really fast, and then there's not much continuous replenishment on the base stock, especially that get more complex with e-commerce. So the key challenge that we see nowadays is really the inventory. It's hard to predict consumers' behavior now. A lot of our clients actually did not reach their revenue target the past Black Friday or holiday season and end up with a lot of inventory. And this is not something you can just get rid of because it also has consequences because they occupy your operating space in the warehouses. Actually, a solution that we've seen and then we work with our client is provide visibility throughout the season. Because traditionally, we only predict our volume pre-season and then we do our best to have the most sell-through as possible. If we can create visibility of the velocity class dynamics throughout the season and also the life cycle stage of the product or fashion product, we can really help operation to be more efficient. We can determine a mover is downgrading to a D and end of season, it does not need to stay in the top zone in our warehouses. If a mover or let's say historical A mover, now it's D and end of season, when we receive a return, we don't really need to process the same way to put in back to the inventory. We can route it directly to a secondary channel. So really have real-time visibility of the product dynamics throughout the selling season can help in multiple functions in distribution and fulfillment to create efficiency and solve the ultimate inventory problem.
Now that really is an exciting area of commerce, I must say, the fashion apparel industry. That space is quite interesting, lots of stuff going on there. But in fact, it is risky because you may not meet your targets. You may wind up, as apparently some of the folks you have seen, with a lot of inventory. It has to go into the secondary channel. So I'm just curious, I don't know if you've personally been involved, but what are your thoughts or observations about reverse return logistics in that space, in the apparel fashion industry?
Yeah, return is a key topic. And essentially now what's required is advanced analytics in predicting consumer behavior so that you know what you can expect for return volume. And second, the example I mentioned earlier on creating visibility on more up-to-date master data, you can have optimal route for the return is another key because a lot of companies may still have the same process for return and have multiple touch of the same product back into the inventory. And then the third is probably have multiple channels for where your return can go, right? Do you go back to inventory? Do you go to discount? Do you go to your outlet? And all these open more opportunities as your secondary channel.
I want to turn to another subject, and this is something I found quite interesting as you and I were speaking just before we sat down to do this interview. You mentioned the self-healing supply chain. I find that term fascinating, but define it for the viewer. What do you mean by that? And walk us through that.
Yeah. Self-healing supply chain is actually a term that we were discussing and we heard from our client and we all really liked it. So the key concept is we want to develop supply chain that we can detect signals, we can predict upcoming event or what's going to happen, and then we can do autonomous decision making and then take action on it so we can prevent event from happening. So it sounds very fancy, but I'll give you two different examples to look at inbound and outbound in the supply chain. So let's say a lot of our clients across different industries, they may struggle with inbound during COVID, right? And the ocean shipment and the Asia supply was having delay. So we can leverage visibility solution as well as advanced analytics to predict is my PO going to be delayed even when it's at the supplier stage, or is my lead time still accurate based on the updated lead time, and what's my estimated arrival time for my inbound goods, and then predict what product or what PO will have high probability to be late, and then build decision on it. We can set threshold based on the importance of the goods, based on the level of delay, and based on the probability to take directions of whether we want to directly place another order to protect our strategic important stock. Do we want to expedite existing order if the issue is still at the supplier hand? Or do we want to change supplier if this is a problem that we cannot work through with existing supplier? All these are decisions that we make today, takes time and takes information flow, but we can build with technology some autonomous decision making by those thresholds to accelerate the process. So that's the inbound example. There's another example of outbound, very specific in operations. Let's say we receive customer order, and then with our current backlog in the warehouse, with our automation system, and with the cutoff time requirement, we may predict there's a high chance of a key account order to be delayed or not meeting the on-time in full. And then again, autonomous decision making, set different priority of the order, change the weighting logic, so we bump up the order importance in our day-to-day operation in our warehouses. That's another example. Again, following, kind of detect the signal with orders, predict what's gonna happen, take autonomous decision with it, and then act on it so that we can prevent things from happening.
That was a fascinating explanation of self-healing supply chains. Very, very interesting. Final question to you, Victoria. It occurs to me that, some of the viewers might not be entirely familiar with Miebach and just what it is that it does. So if you would take a moment and explain to us, the focus of the company. Tell us a little something about how you feel that you have been enhancing the operations of your customer base. What do you say?
Sure. Miebach is a consulting firm, but we're solely focusing supply chain. We have 3 different practices. One is strategy, where we help our client to decide on a high-level long-term strategy of their production footprint, the distribution network, their inventory strategies, and transportation strategies. We have our second practice, that's engineering services, where we design facility for our clients. We look at within the 4 walls, select the right automation, and integrate different technology for them, and then also support the implementation. Our third practice is where I'm leading, the digitalization service. It's really focused on leverage the power of data, develop advanced analytics in AI to support supply chain decision making and process automation. So the example I made with the previous 2 questions are examples of our supply chain digital services where we develop and implement for our clients.
That is some interesting and quite valuable work that you have going on there at Miebach. Victoria, I know you are busy here at the conference, but you found time to speak with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's Victoria Ma, Miebach, walking us through some incredibly interesting developments in the supply chain world. Thanks for watching.